Hi everybody, Matt here from Matt Likes Comics. Today I am going to introduce you to another book that I really liked as a kid and I still love to this day. I have collected the whole run of the series. I think it's a great series, and I'm going to talk to you today about the first story arc. That group, it's a group, is called the All-Star Squadron. Now, the All-Star Squadron was a group of heroes from the wartime era where DC used a bunch of their Golden Age characters. It was written by Roy Thomas, pardon me, and we all know Roy Thomas is a huge Golden Age fan, especially of DC heroes. What this series did was it took pretty much every Golden Age hero that was out there and put them all together onto one team. And Roy would spend time doing retcons, filling in blanks on things that were missing from the original stories, trying to flesh them out so that if you have a knowledge of the original stories and the current stuff, such as the All-Star Squadron, you would be able to have an enjoyable read. And Roy was nice enough to put notes, editor's notes with with issues, name and numbers, and he would put things down that so and so was da yada yada yada. This book. Jerry Ordway was the main artist for this series at first, the first 20 issues or so. We all know Jerry Ordway, for he also worked on Superman later as a writer slash penciler plotter, but that was later. This series came out in 1981 originally. Now, the first appearance of the All-Star Squadron was in a 8-page insert in Justice League of America 193. I do not have that book, but it is on my want list. Basically, in that book, in the 8-page intro, members of the Justice Society, and please note that that's a completely different group than the All-Star Squadron. The Justice Society is always the 8 active heroes that are in the society at any given time, plus their 3 reserve members in 1941. What the All-Star Squadron was every single costumed hero in America was a member of the All-Star Squadron automatically by the fact they're just a mystery man. This is important because eventually they managed to get the entire group together in, I think, issue 37, and they finally have a big meeting and they finally figure out everything that's going on with who's in the squadron or not. So what I'm going to cover today is the first plot line for issues 1 to 3. Keep in mind that issue 1 continues the story after the 8-page insert, and that's why I did mention it, because at this point, members of the Justice Society, with the exception of Dr. Midnight, Atom, and Hawkman, have all been captured and have disappeared. No one knows where they are. This is where they're beginning the fight. One of the reasons, by the way, I'm doing this storyline is because the villain of the piece is one of my favorite villains of all time. Especially when he fights. Well, obviously he fights the Justice Society, but also here he's fighting the All-Star Squadron. So, without further ado, let's take a look at issue number 1. Here you have photos. You have Hawkman, Dr. Midnight, and Atom looking at photos of heroes on the thing. A lot of them are their Justice Society people, but also you get people like Plastic Man, the Vigilante, Robot Man, and the Crimson Avenger, and Plastic Man, who are not members of the Justice Society. Basically, here in this issue, Hawkman, after being attacked and escaping in the insert, arrives at the Justice Society HQ, where he finds Plastic Man waiting for him. Plastic Man is waiting there because he has orders to bring the Justice Society to Washington, D.C. to meet with the president. This is considered to be very urgent. Now, the JSA Society is in a building that's owned by Wesley Dodds, who is the Sandman, and Plastic Man is sort of figuring out that he's probably one of the Justice Society members, but that's all something that comes up later. This is another one of those books that stories upon stories upon stories build. So if you miss an issue, sometimes you don't always know what's going on. You need to read more. It is very detailed. This series is very detailed. Meanwhile, the Shining Knight meets a girl by the name of Danette Riley, who is a volcanologist on a Hawaiian island that just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And she's there to study it and see what's going on. Well, eventually, the Shining Knight and Danette go into a cave that is wrong. They should never have entered, and they are captured. There is a gentleman, a red-haired gentleman, who comes forward to say, "Ha ha, I've got you. My name is Per Degaton," and he is my favorite, one of my favorite. Him, the Ultra Humanite, are my favorite Golden Age villains. And he comes forward, and he tells them that he's come back in time from 1947 in order to conquer the world. Meanwhile, Pearl Harbor happens. You see that Rod Riley, who's Danette's brother and the original Firebrand, is injured during the bombing at Pearl Harbor. So he is in the story, but he's not in the story. Cut to Dr. Midnight and Adam, who've decided to go to the Washington Redskins game that afternoon. They're in Washington. They had nothing better to do, so they decided to go to the game. While they're at the game, they hear the constant calling of admirals and generals through the intercom system to go call their office. So they want to know what's going on. Then someone tells them about the bombing at Pearl Harbor. So Adam and Dr. Midnight go to the White House, where they meet up with Hawkman, Plastic Man, and then there are 3 other characters that show up by the name of Johnny Quick, Liberty Bell, and Robot Man. These 7 meet with FDR, and FDR, who's Franklin Roosevelt, for those that don't know who FDR is, he was the president during World War II. He decides to use the Mystery Men as one of America's greatest natural resources and form this team, the All-Star Squadron. The book ends with a bunch of Zero planes, and Zeros were the Mitsubishi Zero was the plane that the Japanese used as a fighter bomber. They used them in Pearl Harbor, and it was used quite a bit during the Second World War. And the whole bunch of them are going towards San Francisco. That's how the book ends. Which leaves us to issue 2. As Hawkman wraps up his some of the things he wanted to do and grabs weapons, Plastic Man is being carried by Robot Man to Norfolk. The reason is they are getting a plane to fly out to San Francisco. On their way there, they've noticed that somebody has taken advantage of the chaos, so to speak, of the bombing and wondering what's going on to do a bank heist in Williamsburg. The 3 of them managed to stop it, and the bank robbers are caught. But it makes them mad. We get this whole patriotic, how dare anybody do this sort of thing during a war? Don't they know it's a war on? And kind of thing. So the 7 heroes fly out to San Francisco. They were sent there by FDR. They had no idea. They have no idea at the moment that currently there are planes headed towards San Francisco to drop an attack. So while they're on the plane, they do that obligatory, my name is so-and-so, and I do this in my regular life thing that, heroes always feel the need to do. Again, in some cases, like Hawkman, we already know because he's used on a semi-regular basis. But people like Liberty Bell and Johnny Quick who haven't had, the last time Liberty Bell was used was 1948, and the last time Johnny Quick was in a story was 1951. So they are they for people who don't know those ones, this is a new heroes for them, so that the background is a little helpful. But what we don't realize is that Liberty Bell is super for the first time. Now she has her powers in her regular story. This is 1941. Takes place before most of the Golden Age stories has already happened, and that is a key because most of the villains in this book were brought here from 1947 that Per Degaton came from, and they know their enemies, but their enemies have not met them yet. As an example, Solomon Grundy. Green Lantern hasn't faced him yet, but Grundy knows Green Lantern and wants to kill him. So I'm using that as an example. So once they arrive to San Francisco, they see what's going on and they split the team into flyers and non-flyers. And the flying team, which is Hawkman and Johnny Quick, take on one side, take on the Zeros that are out there, and the others land on the ground where they're joined by Phantom Lady, who's a San Francisco resident, and so they end up fighting on the ground as they're being attacked, and they notice that some people have come out, and they also have some American soldiers with them, but that's more for the next issue. We cut to the island where Danette and Shining Knight have now been moved to a submarine. It's commanded by the Sky Pirate, which is one of those heroes that come from the future. Sorry, one of those villains that come from the future. And basically, Degaton starts bragging about his plans to the Shining Knight and Danette because they're not going to be around anyway. So, I'm going to rule this and I'm going to kill you anyway. Basically, what he came from 1947 and he knows how the war went. And he's here to try and change the war so that America goes after Japan first instead of allying up with the British and the Commonwealth and going after Germany first, and so on and so on and so on. This way, he feels that it will lead to a stalemate where he will end up being able to rule in the United States. So what you see is a continuation of the battle, the air battles and the land battles. And the last thing in this book is Degaton decides to blow the volcano, because at this point we know that the Justice Society who've been kidnapped are in the volcano area. We saw them briefly in issue 1, but in issue 2 we see more who's there. It's the Spectre, Dr. Fate, Wonder Woman, Superman, Batman, Robin. They caught the Flash, Green Lantern, all these big names. They're all there, and they were all captured in JLA 193. Even Superman and Batman, who are only honorary members. So they're all caught. So he decides to try and blow up the volcano that the Justice Society is in. Leading us to issue 3, which has a heck of a lot going on. This is one heck of a book. You'll have to read it twice just to make sure you catch everything that goes on, but it is worth it. Basically, sure enough, that second wave of Zeros that gets sent from this submarine that is also an aircraft carrier that Per Degaton has. All right, they attack and they start bombing where the ground ASSs are. Yes, I abbreviated ASS, All-Star Squadron. Think of it whatever you will. Superman makes a crack about it in this book. As long as you don't abbreviate it properly. Okay, so Degaton then gets surprised because Shining Knight manages to escape and start to fight. Okay? Sure enough, Solomon Grundy gets into the fight with the Shining Knight, but the Shining Knight is able to hold him off. And it takes Solomon Grundy and Professor Zodiac in order to try and keep him busy. Meanwhile, Wotan, who's a magical guy, who's a big enemy of Doctor Fate. Now he has fought. At this point, Doctor Fate has fought Wotan. This isn't the first, but this Wotan has like 6 or 7 fights against Doctor Fate, where Doctor Fate only knows of one. But that again later. Doctor Fate really is a non-factor in the story, so it really doesn't matter. But Wotan tries to use magic, and it doesn't work. So Sir Justin manages to smash the hull, causing some flooding, and he manages to escape out with Danette. Wotan then seals the hull, but as the Shining Knight and Danette get to the surface, ta-da! The flying horse Winged Victory is there, Sir Justin's horse. And they manage to get on the horse and fly away. However, Professor Zodiac's plane is right behind them. They don't quite get away. Meanwhile, the Atom manages to locate the sub in the water, and this Plastic Man turns himself into a sub, carrying all of the ground. I call him the ground team with them, and he manages to break into the sub. Atom charges at Degaton, and Dr. Midnight goes after Grundy. However, neither of them are very effective in the fight, because Degaton actually uses the chaos to get away from this particular fight and move to another part of the sub, where the sub is self-sealing, so Plastic Man is able to join the fight. He and Liberty Bell and Atom manage to fight the big group of minions that Degaton has sent against them. And, and all these minions are from the future as well, and they're all hypnotized, just like the Japanese pilots, as the air people have discovered as they're fighting against the pilots, that they're all hypnotized, and as if they're just flying by whatever, by memory or natural ability for whatever. They don't. They notice that they don't remember anything the second they yank them out of the plane and start throwing them on the ground. I think 1 or 2 of the pilots actually die, which shows you that not everybody has Batman and Superman's not kill policy, especially since it's wartime. So Degaton manages to escape from Liberty Bell when Grundy steps in front of her, and basically they're in a position as how can we stop this? So they get to the top of the sub and they manage to send a flare up and notifying Hawkman and Johnny Quick, who are the 2 fighting in the air, of where they are. And sure enough, they come down and they manage to get onto the sub. Then they realize that the sub is sinking, and they're going back to the volcanic island where everybody is. Meanwhile, on this volcanic island, Winged Victory has dropped off Shining Knight and Danette. And those 2 go down the tunnel because they decide they want to try and rescue the Justice Society. They find, though, that against Wotan's spell, Sir Justin's sword is not very good. Luckily or unluckily, they come across Wotan and Professor Zodiac, who are already there, and they're attacking them. Sir Justin falls on the ground. He's knocked over during the fight, so he throws his sword at Professor Zodiac, whose Universal Alchemist solvent falls onto the Spectre. Now, this solvent somehow takes off Wotan's magic without harming the Spectre. I mean, he's already dead, right? So the Spectre manages to escape. Sure enough, the Spectre stops the volcano from collapsing and manages to free the rest of the Justice Society. In response, Wotan shoots Danette with a green ray that makes her glow, and Danette falls into the lava, the fake lava. Degaton's distrust significant. My apologies. Degaton's destruct signal finally reaches the island. I mean, the technology is still 1940s. It's radio waves, and without augmentation, and it can sometimes take a while to travel as they lose the light speed during the while it loses some. If you know your radio waves and your physics behind radio waves traveling through an atmosphere and over the curvature of the Earth, you'll understand what I'm saying. Anyways, the destruct signal finally reaches the island, and Wotan and Zodiac disappear. Now, this has been happening throughout the book. Every time one of the 1947 villains gets defeated in a fight, they disappear. They go back in time to their regular place. Because Degaton had set that up so that they would go back, they'd have no memory of what's going on, and that was part of how he. You never really get an explanation on how he manages to pull through time. It just has to do with Professor Z's invention. And again, if you're a longtime reader of the Justice Society, you know Degaton and Professor Z because there's 4 or 5 stories where this is involved. So at this point, the volcano now erupts, but Superman and the Spectre are able to stop all of from doing any damage, and they manage to rescue Danette. Danette is still glowing, and she's hot, but they realize fire has not hurt her. Danette has now got fire powers, which in later stories, she's the new firebrand. And she, by the way, Danette Riley is Rod Riley's sister, the original firebrand. This comes in handy as you read the story, as you read the series. So Superman now flies around looking for the sub, and Degaton has decided, well, I'm not going to win. I'm going to go back in time. Poof, before he gets like in serious pain or whatever. So sure enough, Degaton disappears back into 1947. And as a result, everything he did is gone and resets. The entire lineup of the All-Star Squadron finds themselves on the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, not knowing how they got there, not knowing what's up. They do know about Pearl Harbor. That really happened because it had nothing to do with Degaton. But we're back to regular history in that sense. I mean, this is still Earth 2, right? And so that is the beginning of the All-Star Squadron. They introduce each other themselves, and their adventures continue, starting in number 4, which is another good story, which fills in another bunch of stuff. I will admit it is hard if you're not 100% familiar with the characters or with their histories and backgrounds and stuff. It might seem a little overwhelming, but I promise you, the more issues of All-Star Squadron you read, especially if you're not a Golden Age fanatic, the more issues of All-Star Squadron you read, the more you get to know of the team and the more it all makes sense. I love this series. I've always liked the Golden Age heroes. I've always been a big fan of DC Golden Age, especially since you got Superman, Batman, Green Lantern, Flash. And to me, when this series came out in 1981, I was going awesome because this was a chance to read new adventures of heroes that I really liked. Because other than this, at the time, this was the only way, or reprints in a digest, because there was a JSA reprint digest, which has the first appearance of Degaton from All-Star Comics 35, if you can get a hold of it. There is a blue ribbon comic. I'm not sure the number, but it's a Justice Society. It's got the origin. It reprints the stories from Brave and the Bold of Starman and Black Canary, and it has the first appearance of Per Degaton, as I said, in All-Star Comics 35. I love this series. I really think that people should read this series if you are really into comic book history, because although there are some retcons, it is only there to make sense of the story. Roy Thomas has left as much of the original stuff alone as possible, and as you go, you get to learn things. Like, for example, in the Golden Age, our man just suddenly left the JSA for a year, and no one knows why. Well, that storyline is in the All-Star Squadron. There is a book that explains why Green Lantern quit the Justice Society. Again, no one knew why. He was just suddenly not in the book. I mean, we know why if you know your history, because Green Lantern got his own book. He was no longer the Justice Society because their rule was if you had your own book, you couldn't be a full time member of the Justice Society. But regardless, this series, I'm going to pull one or two more storylines from this over the next few months because there's some good ones in here. The first appearance of Infinity Incorporated is in All-Star Squadron, and a lot of heroes that you have not. You get to see Uncle Sam, Doll Man, all this the quality heroes. Phantom Lady, as I said, was brought out in these three books. So if you like them, if you like these characters, I recommend you read All Star Squadron. My name is Matt, and if you like what I've done, please like, subscribe, comment below. Comment if you've read the All Star Squadron before. Comment if you hadn't. Tell me what you think. I want to hear from everybody. I like debating comics. I like knowing what people think. That's why I watch YouTube videos as well. Just so, as I said, like, subscribe, comment. My name is Matt, and I like comics. And I hope you do too. Thanks.